Something massive just changed in the Middle East in the last 24 hours, and if you still think this is just another cycle of threats, counter-threats, and familiar headlines, you are missing the strategic point. Iran has just demonstrated that it can alter the tempo of the entire region, force multiple capitals to react at once, and do it in a way that exposes the limits of every defensive system built to stop it. Stay with me, because by the time I am finished, you will understand why this is not simply about one launch, one strike, or one political statement. This is about a state proving that it can raise the price of containment faster than its opponents can lower the price of escalation. My name is Colonel Adrian Thornwell, and I want to be very precise about what this means. Donald Trump warned, in his own blunt way, that pressure without a coherent strategy does not solve the Iran problem. It hardens it. John Mearsheimer, from a realist perspective, has spent years explaining that states respond to power, threat, and survival, not wishful thinking. Both of those ideas matter right now because Iran has learned from every sanction package, every covert action, every cyber intrusion, every assassination, and every diplomatic warning. It did not collapse. It adapted. And that is exactly what determined adversaries do when they believe time can be turned into a weapon. Let me explain why this is so significant. Iran's military power is not just a pile of missiles and drones sitting in silos. It is a system of systems designed to stress the defender's decision-making process. The IRGC Aerospace Force understands salvo timing, target saturation, decoy employment, radar confusion, and layered follow-on attacks. Systems like the Fateh 110 family, the K-Bar Shekan, the Emad, and potentially longer-range cruise assets are not employed in isolation. They are integrated with Shahed 136 and Shahed 131 one-way attack drones with electronic warfare support, with proxy launch networks, and with maritime harassment options in the Gulf and Red Sea. The objective is not simply to strike a target. The objective is to force the enemy to expend time, interceptors, flight hours, and political capital. War is not fought on paper. In the real world, a Patriot PAC-3 MSE battery, an Israeli Arrow 3 or David Sling layer, an F-35 Ayadir patrol, and Aegis-equipped naval assets all have to make decisions in seconds. Is the track a drone, a missile, a decoy, or a software-induced false return? Is the launch part of the main effort, or just a feint before a second wave? Is the next threat coming from Western Iran, from Iraq, from Yemen, or from a proxy cell that has been activated to complicate attribution? Think about what that means. It means the defender is not just fighting objects in the air. The defender is fighting uncertainty, and uncertainty is where Iran tries to live. Let me step back and give you the strategic picture as I see it right now. Iran understands that it cannot defeat the United States or Israel in a conventional head-on contest. It does not need to. It is building a model of survivability and coercion around asymmetry. Hardened sites like Fordow and Natanz, dispersed missile production, underground storage, dual-use procurement networks, and a sanctions evasion logistics chain running through intermediaries and front companies all serve one purpose: preserve the ability to threaten even under pressure. That is the core of Iranian strategy. It is not victory in the Western sense. It is endurance. It is denial. It is making sure that any attempt to impose a decisive result becomes painfully expensive. Now, let me be direct about the industrial dimension, because this is where many analysts still fail to connect the dots. Iran is not only fighting with rockets and drones. It is fighting with oil, shipping, and time. Every threat to the Strait of Hormuz, every drone attack near maritime corridors, every strike on a tanker, every mine threat, every anti-ship missile launch immediately ripples through insurance rates, freight rates, and energy markets. Tehran does not have to close Hormuz to shape behavior. It only has to make the cost of normal commerce unpredictable. That is enough to trigger anxiety in boardrooms, ministries, and shipping firms from Rotterdam to Singapore. And if you think sanctions alone solve that, look carefully at what Iran has done over the last several years. It has built shadow fleet mechanisms. It has discounted crude through intermediaries. It has used ship-to-ship transfers, falsified routing, and opaque ownership structures to keep revenue moving. Sanctions have imposed friction, but friction is not the same as collapse. The regime has adapted by becoming more disciplined, more secretive, and more reliant on state-controlled channels tied directly to the security establishment. That means the economic war is now inseparable from the military one. Every drone launched, every missile test, every maritime provocation is part of a broader effort to preserve regime leverage. This is why Trump's warning came true in a larger sense. His argument was that if you pressure Iran without building a stable end state, you do not get moderation. You get escalation, adaptation, and a more dangerous adversary. Mearsheimer would call that balancing behavior. I would call it predictable state behavior. If Iran believes the United States and its partners are unwilling to sustain pressure over time, then Tehran will use that perception to push harder. It will probe the seams. It will test air defenses. It will activate proxies. It will keep the region in a state of managed crisis, because managed crisis is where Iran gains leverage. And that brings us to the geopolitical layer. Iran is not acting in isolation. It is operating through Hezbollah in Lebanon, through Kataib Hezbollah and other militias in Iraq and Syria, and through the Houthis in Yemen, who have become an essential part of the pressure architecture in the Red Sea and beyond. It is also watching Russia and China closely. Moscow benefits when American attention is pulled away from Europe and the Black Sea. Beijing benefits when energy flows remain available at a discount and when U.S. deterrence looks uncertain. Tehran understands that. It uses back-channel diplomacy through Oman, Qatar, and other intermediaries, not because it seeks peace on Western terms, but because it wants options. It wants bargaining power without surrendering coercive capability. Let me be precise about what happened strategically when Iran changed the game. It signaled that escalation is now multi-domain, not symbolic. A missile launch is no longer just a missile launch. It is a message to the region, a test of air defenses, a probe of political resolve, and a demonstration of industrial capacity. A drone wave is not just a cheap attack. It is a way to force an expensive response. A maritime threat is not just a nuisance, it is a way to insert Iranian risk into global supply chains. That is the real power here. Iran is trying to make its opponents pay in several currencies at once: military, economic, and psychological. And there is an ugly truth embedded in all of this. Defensive systems can blunt attacks, but they cannot solve the underlying attrition problem by themselves. If an attacker can produce more Shahed drones, more short-range ballistic missiles, and more proxy fires than the defender can afford to intercept indefinitely, then the attacker still has strategic leverage. That is why stockpiles, industrial surge capacity, alliance coordination, and sustained political will matter so much. A single night of interception is not victory. A sustained campaign in which the attacker's launch rate drops, the supply chain fractures, the proxies are isolated, and the financial system begins to choke. That is victory. So here is the strategic asymmetry in plain terms. Iran is striking to create fear, uncertainty, and cost. Its opponents are trying to preserve stability, protect civilians, defend shipping, and prevent a wider war. Those goals are not identical. The danger is that the longer this drags on, the more Tehran believes it can normalize coercion as a permanent condition. That is the lesson of every long conflict. Capacity matters more than pain, always. Pain gets headlines. Capacity decides outcomes. And that is why this moment matters. Iran has not become stronger because it is invincible. It has become more dangerous because it has learned how to survive, adapt, and impose costs in ways that are politically difficult to answer. Trump saw part of that problem early. Mearsheimer has explained the logic behind it for years. But now the consequences are visible in real time. The region is dealing with a state that has moved from pressure absorption to pressure projection, from proxy ambiguity to direct signaling, from quiet endurance to active strategic coercion. The world needs to stay focused on what is actually happening on this battlefield. Stay sharp, stay informed. We will be back with more updates as this campaign continues to develop.